Then let the Blackwood bloodline end with me. Alpha King Ethan Blackwood's voice crossed the council chamber with such quiet finality that even the fire seemed to shrink inside the stone hearth. 12 counselors sat around the long oak table beneath the silver crest of the Northern Territories. Men and women who had negotiated wars, settled pact disputes, and watched lesser alphas lose their nerve beneath Ethan's stare. None spoke now. Outside the tall windows, winter rain traced silver lines down the glass, and thunder rolled somewhere beyond the mountains. Ethan remained standing at the head of the table, one hand resting beside an untouched marriage decree. At 34, he had ruled for 11 years without a Luna, without an heir, and without allowing anyone close enough to question why. Your Majesty, Counselor Harrison finally said, carefully, this is no longer a private decision. 7 territories depend upon succession. Ethan's gray eyes shifted toward him. My private life became council property when... Harrison swallowed. Beside him, Elder Samuel Reed leaned forward, his lined face unusually grave. No one is asking you to love the woman. That almost made Ethan smile. Almost. Then you understand exactly why I refuse. He pushed the decree across the polished wood. Waiting beneath his signature line was the name Victoria Hale, daughter of one of the strongest alpha families in the West. Beautiful, educated, politically flawless. Ethan felt nothing when he read her name. He had felt nothing for any of them. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you believe that kindness is power, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love redeems the broken. Now, back to Ethan. He turned toward the rain-darkened windows. 10 years earlier, something inside him had gone silent. His wolf had once been a constant presence beneath his skin, restless and watchful, a second heartbeat made of instinct. Then came one terrible winter, one betrayal Ethan never discussed, and afterward there had been only emptiness. He could still shift when necessary. He still carried alpha strength. But the ancient presence that should have recognized a mate had stopped answering. Ethan had eventually stopped calling. The moon gathering is tomorrow night, Harrison said. 23 eligible women are already traveling to Blackwood Castle. Send them home. Ethan. Only Nathan Cole, his beta and oldest friend, could use his first name in that room. Ethan glanced toward him. Nathan's expression held no judgment, which somehow made it harder to ignore. You don't have to promise marriage, Nathan said. Just attend. Ethan looked back at the decree. He remembered his father once telling him that kings did not marry for themselves. They married for borders, treaties, children, stability. Ethan had spent half his life watching duty turn human beings into pieces on a board. He would not do it to another person. I will attend, he said at last. Relief moved around the table. Then Ethan added, and when my wolf chooses no one, this discussion ends permanently. No one challenged him. Chairs moved softly as the counselors began gathering their papers. Ethan waited until the chamber emptied before releasing the breath locked inside his chest. Nathan paused at the doorway. You coming? In a minute. The door closed. Silence settled over the room. Ethan reached for the marriage decree, intending to fold it once and leave it unsigned. Then his hand stopped. A sensation moved beneath his ribs. Small, so faint he almost mistook it for his pulse. Ethan froze. The room suddenly felt too warm. His hearing sharpened until he could distinguish rain striking individual panes of glass. Somewhere far below, beyond 3 floors of stone corridors, servants crossed the eastern wing carrying linens, medicine, and supplies for tomorrow's gathering. And among all those ordinary sounds came something impossible. A heartbeat. Soft. Steady. Female. Ethan's fingers tightened against the table. No. His wolf had been silent for 10 years. Yet from the darkness inside him came a slow, unmistakable stirring, like something ancient opening its eyes after a very long sleep. Ethan turned toward the eastern corridor. He did not know that 2 floors below, a young Omega named Claire Bennett had just entered Blackwood Castle carrying a wooden box of medicine against her chest. He did not know she had no invitation to the moon gathering, no noble family waiting to present her, and no expectation that any alpha would ever notice her. He knew only that for the first time in a decade, the wolf inside the Alpha King was awake. Claire Bennett had learned long ago that being unnoticed could feel almost like freedom. while Blackwood Castle stirred around her with the restless energy of the approaching moon gathering. She moved through the Eastern Service corridor with a wooden medicine box held carefully against her chest, her soft brown boots making almost no sound against the polished stone floor. Rain whispered against the narrow windows beside her, carrying the clean scent of wet pine from the mountains beyond the castle walls. Claire liked that sound. Rain asked nothing from her. People usually did. At 22, she had spent most of her life discovering exactly how little the packs expected from an Omega whose wolf barely seemed to exist. Other Omegas carried scents that announced them before they entered a room: warm vanilla, wildflowers, cedar, honey, dozens of natural signatures that alpha and beta wolves recognized instinctively. Claire had almost none. Healers had examined her when she was 16, then again at 18. Their conclusions had always been delivered with careful voices and sympathetic eyes. Her wolf was there, they believed, but quiet. Unusually quiet. Her scent was so faint that most wolves standing 3 feet away could not detect it. Claire had stopped hoping for a different answer years ago. She turned down a narrow staircase toward the royal infirmary, grateful to escape the growing commotion upstairs. Noble families had been arriving since noon, filling the western courtyard with carriages, attendants, trunks, silk dresses, polished shoes, and enough perfume to overwhelm even human senses. Claire had watched them through an infirmary window earlier. Every woman seemed to carry herself as though tomorrow night might change her life. Perhaps it would. Claire had no reason to wonder about her own chances. She was not attending the gathering. She was not supposed to be anywhere near it. You are late. The infirmary steward, Mrs. Whitmore, stood beside a long counter covered with folded towels and glass medicine bottles. She was a silver-haired beta woman whose stern expression frightened most young servants, although Claire had discovered that her sharp voice concealed a remarkably patient heart. 3 minutes, Claire said, setting down the box. Mrs. Whitmore glanced toward the clock. 4. A tiny smile touched Claire's mouth. Then I am very late. Mrs. Whitmore tried to remain stern and failed. Put the fever medicine in the upper cabinet. Elder Reed requested another bottle of his tonic for tomorrow evening. Claire nodded and began unpacking the box. Work made sense to her. Bottles had labels. Herbs had purposes. Clean cloth belonged in clean drawers. There were no mating laws hidden inside a jar of lavender salve. No social ranks attached to dried mint. Here, she could simply be useful. Voices drifted past the open infirmary door. Claire recognized the confident laugh of Victoria Hale before she saw her. Victoria entered with 2 attendants, dressed in a deep blue traveling coat trimmed with silver embroidery. Her blonde hair was perfectly arranged despite the rain, and her posture carried the effortless certainty of someone who had never needed permission to belong anywhere. Her gaze settled briefly on Claire. Is that the scentless Omega? One attendant whispered, apparently believing Claire could not hear. Victoria looked almost apologetic. Do not call her that. For half a second, Claire felt surprised. Then Victoria continued. She cannot help what she was born without. The kindness in her tone made the words sting more than open mockery would have. Claire lowered her eyes to the medicine bottles and continued working. She would not give them embarrassment. She would not give them anger. Most importantly, she would not give them the satisfaction of watching her shrink. She is fortunate, really, the second attendant said. Tomorrow must be terrifying for eligible Omegas. Victoria removed her gloves 1 finger at a time. Claire is not eligible for the royal presentation. Silence followed. Claire placed another bottle in the cabinet. Carefully, gently. Correct, she said without turning around. So, I suppose we both have something to be grateful for. Mrs. Whitmore suddenly became very interested in hiding a smile. Victoria said nothing. A moment later, the 3 women continued down the corridor. Claire released a slow breath only after their footsteps disappeared. She reached for the final bottle inside the wooden box and found something beneath it that she had not packed. A folded piece of yellowed paper rested against the bottom. Her name was written across it in handwriting she had not seen since childhood. Claire stopped breathing. She knew those narrow letters. Her grandmother Margaret had written them. With trembling fingers, Claire unfolded the paper. There was only one sentence. Never let a crowned wolf catch your scent beneath a full moon. Claire read the sentence 3 times before the words began to feel real. Never let a crowned wolf catch your scent beneath a full moon. Her grandmother Margaret had been dead for 9 years, yet the handwriting was unmistakable, narrow letters leaning slightly to the right. The same careful script Claire remembered from birthday cards and labels on jars of dried herbs. She turned the yellowed paper over. Nothing. No explanation. No date. Only a warning that made little sense to a woman who barely had a cent at all. Claire. Mrs. Whitmore's voice brought her back to the infirmary. Claire folded the note quickly and slipped it into the pocket of her plain gray dress. Everything all right? Yes. The answer came too quickly. Mrs. Whitmore studied her for a moment, but did not press. Then take Elder Reed's tonic upstairs before someone decides tomorrow's gathering requires another emergency meeting. Claire reached for the dark glass bottle. Work. She could understand work. She could not understand how a letter written by her grandmother had appeared beneath medicine she had personally packed that morning. She left the infirmary and climbed toward the second floor, where the quiet service corridors gradually opened into the brighter halls reserved for royal guests. The difference was impossible to miss. Fresh white roses filled silver vases. Crystal lamps threw warm light across polished floors. Servants carried gowns toward guest suites, while visiting families discussed tomorrow night as though the future could be arranged with the correct dress and an important last name. Claire kept close to the wall. She had almost reached Elder Reed's rooms when familiar voices approached from the opposite corridor. Victoria Hale appeared first, now accompanied by 4 young women from prominent packs. Claire lowered her gaze and stepped aside. There she is, one woman said. Claire wished she had kept walking. Victoria stopped. Claire Bennett. There was no cruelty in her expression. That somehow made Claire more cautious. You work in the infirmary, correct? Yes, Miss Hale. Then perhaps you can settle something for us. Victoria's companions exchanged amused looks. Is it true you have never been presented at a mating ceremony? Claire felt warmth climb into her cheeks. The question sounded polite. It was not. That is true. Not even in your home pack. Another woman asked. Claire tightened her fingers around the medicine bottle. There was no reason. Because no alpha can sense you? The corridor became very quiet. Claire could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere behind the wall. She could also hear her grandmother's old voice in memory, telling her that dignity was often quietest when someone else wanted a spectacle. Claire lifted her eyes. Because being noticed is not the same thing as being valued. One of the women blinked. Victoria's expression changed slightly, surprise replacing the gentle superiority she had worn downstairs. Claire gave a small, respectful nod and walked past them. Her knees felt less steady than she wanted, but she did not hurry. She reached Elder Reed's door and knocked once. Come in. Samuel Reed sat beside a window surrounded by open books, old maps, and documents bearing seals Claire did not recognize. Moonlight had begun to gather behind the clouds outside, pale and distant above the mountains. Claire placed the tonic on his desk. Mrs. Whitmore sent this. Thank you, child. His attention remained on a brittle book until Claire turned to leave. Then the folded note slipped halfway from her pocket. Samuel's gaze caught it. More precisely, it caught the tiny silver symbol drawn beneath her grandmother's signature, a crescent moon crossed by 3 delicate lines. His face went still. Where did you get that? Claire followed his stare and pulled out the paper. It belonged to my grandmother. Samuel stood so quickly his chair scraped softly across the floor. Margaret Bennett, you knew her? He did not answer. Instead, he extended his hand. Claire hesitated before passing him the note. Samuel read the sentence, and whatever color remained in his face seemed to disappear. He crossed to the door and closed it. Claire, listen carefully. Tomorrow night, you must remain in the eastern wing. She stared at him. Why? Because the moon gathering takes place under a full moon. I know. Samuel looked toward the castle tower visible through the window, where the royal Blackwood flag moved against the darkening sky. And Ethan Blackwood is not merely an alpha. Claire almost laughed from confusion, but Samuel's expression stopped her. I barely have a cent. That is what everyone believes. He returned the note, but kept his voice low. Your grandmother spent years making certain they believed it. A chill moved across Claire's arms. Making certain? Samuel stepped back as if he had already said too much. Go downstairs. Do not attend the gathering. Do not enter the royal hall after moonrise, no matter who sends for you. Claire closed her fingers around the note. Elder Reed, what was my grandmother hiding? Samuel looked at her for a long moment. Not what, Claire? His eyes shifted toward the royal tower. Who? Who was she hiding me from? Claire asked, but Samuel Reed did not answer at once. The old elder stood beside the window with one hand resting on the back of his chair, his gaze fixed on the Blackwood flag moving above the eastern tower. Beyond the glass, the rain had thinned to a silver mist, and a pale circle of moonlight was beginning to show through the clouds. Your grandmother understood that some secrets are safest when even the person carrying them does not know they exist, he finally said. Claire stared at him. That does not answer my question. No, Samuel turned toward her. It keeps you safe until I know whether the answer still matters. Claire felt irritation rise beneath her confusion. She had spent 22 years accepting explanations from healers who told her she was unusual, from pack officials who called her harmless, from strangers who looked through her as though she occupied less space than everyone else. She would not accept another half-truth simply because an elder delivered it gently. My grandmother is dead. A letter in her handwriting appeared inside a box I packed myself. You recognized her symbol, and now you are telling me to hide from the king. I think I deserve more than that. Something almost like approval passed through Samuel's eyes. Margaret would have said exactly the same thing. He opened one of the old books on his desk and turned several fragile pages before stopping at an illustration of a crescent crossed by 3 narrow lines. It matched the symbol beneath Margaret's signature. This mark belonged to an old Omega family. Claire leaned closer. The Bennets. No, Samuel closed the book before she could read the faded words beneath the image. Bennett was the name your grandmother wanted the world to remember. Claire's heartbeat stumbled. Then what is my real name? Not tonight. Why? Because tomorrow is the full moon, and King Ethan has agreed to attend the gathering. Claire stepped back from the desk. Those things have nothing to do with me. I sincerely hope you are right. Samuel's voice had become so quiet that she heard the clock ticking again. Until tomorrow night is over, remain in the eastern wing. Do your work. Speak to Mrs. Whitmore. Avoid the royal hall. Claire folded her grandmother's note and returned it to her pocket. And after tomorrow, come back here. I will tell you what I know. It was not enough, but it was more than she had possessed 10 minutes earlier. Claire nodded and left. The corridor outside felt different now. The same lamps burned along the walls. The same servants hurried between rooms. Yet every ordinary detail seemed to conceal a question. Bennett was not her family name. Her missing scent might not be an accident. Her grandmother had hidden something for years, and somehow that secret involved a crowned wolf. Claire descended toward the infirmary, determined to follow Samuel's warning. Staying away from a royal gathering should have been easy. She had spent her entire life becoming excellent at staying away from places where she was unwanted. Upstairs, however, Ethan Blackwood had not moved from the council chamber. The strange heartbeat he had sensed was gone. So was the stirring beneath his ribs. The silence inside him had returned, but now it felt different because he remembered what had occupied it for those few impossible seconds. Awareness. His wolf had not spoken. It had not offered a name or an explanation. It had simply awakened and listened. Ethan walked to the doorway and opened it. Nathan Cole was waiting farther down the hall, speaking with a guard. Nathan. His beta approached immediately. What happened? Ethan almost dismissed the question. Instead, he glanced toward the staircase leading into the eastern wing. Who arrived at the castle this afternoon? Nathan looked puzzled. Half the western packs. Not the guests. Ethan searched for the right words. Servants. Healers. Anyone new. I can get the household register. Do it. Nathan studied him. Why? Ethan heard rain whispering beyond the windows. Nothing else. Whatever presence had touched the edge of his senses had vanished as suddenly as it appeared. Because someone entered this castle today, Ethan said, and my wolf noticed. Nathan went completely still. He knew better than anyone what those words meant. Ethan had told him 10 years ago that the wolf was gone. Are you certain? Ethan looked toward the eastern corridor again. No, then, from somewhere below, a woman laughed softly. The sound was distant, ordinary, almost lost beneath the movement of the castle. Ethan's wolf stirred once. Only once. But this time Ethan was ready for it. His eyes lifted toward the sound. Now I am. By sunset the next evening, Blackwood Castle no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a held breath. Hundreds of candles illuminated the royal hall, their reflections trembling across tall windows where the last blue light of day faded behind the mountains. White roses wound around the stone columns. Musicians waited beneath the western balcony, and representatives from 7 territories filled the room in formal black, silver, and midnight blue. At the center of it all sat Ethan Blackwood. He wore no crown. He rarely did. The silver wolf embroidered across his dark coat was enough to remind everyone who he was. 23 eligible women had come to stand before him, each chosen from respected families, each carrying the approval of a council that desperately wanted its king to choose a future. Ethan wanted only to discover whether yesterday had been real. Lady Victoria Hale of Silver Ridge, the herald announced. Victoria crossed the hall with graceful confidence. She was beautiful in the effortless way Ethan had expected, blonde hair pinned beneath silver ornaments, blue eyes steady, posture flawless. Her scent carried through the hall, clean cedar softened by lavender. Ethan waited. Nothing. No movement beneath his ribs. No awareness in the silent place where his wolf should have been. Victoria stopped several feet before the throne and bowed. "Your Majesty." Lady Hale. Their eyes met. She was intelligent enough to understand his answer before he gave one. Disappointment flickered across her face, then vanished behind perfect composure. Ethan respected her for that. She stepped aside. Another name was announced. Then another. An Omega from Pine Hollow smelled faintly of wildflowers after rain. A Beta heiress from West Haven carried herself with calm authority. A young widow from Cedar Valley made Ethan laugh once with a dry observation about the council turning courtship into government paperwork. He liked her. His wolf did not notice her. Nearly an hour passed. Nathan stood beside the throne, watching Ethan more carefully than the women approaching him. Samuel Reed remained near the council tables, unusually silent. Lady Amelia Grant of Red Creek, the herald called. Ethan listened. Waited. Nothing. Relief should have come. Easily. This was what he had predicted. 23 women could become 223, and the result would remain the same. His wolf had abandoned the question of a mate a decade ago. Yesterday had been exhaustion. Memory. Perhaps instinct reacting to something unfamiliar in the castle. Nothing more. Ethan felt his shoulders loosen for the first time that evening. The council would have its proof. His promise would stand. He would finish the gathering, thank every family, and never permit another ceremonial parade arranged around his private life. Across the castle, Claire Bennett was counting bottles. She had spent the entire evening in the Eastern Infirmary exactly as Samuel instructed. She had no gown waiting upstairs. No family name announced by a herald. No reason to wonder whether Ethan Blackwood would approve of her. She had reorganized 2 cabinets, prepared Elder Reed's evening tonic, replaced fresh linens, and read her grandmother's warning enough times to memorize every curve of the ink. The full moon had risen 20 minutes earlier. Claire could see it through the infirmary window, bright and white above the dark pine forest. She pulled the curtain closed. "That seems dramatic," Mrs. Whitmore said from the supply table. Claire attempted a smile. "The light was in my eyes." Mrs. Whitmore looked toward the window, then toward Claire, clearly unconvinced. Before she could respond, hurried footsteps sounded outside. A young servant appeared in the doorway, breathing hard from running. "Mrs. Whitmore, Elder Reed needs his tonic immediately." Claire looked at the bottle already waiting beside her. "I prepared it." The servant reached for it, then hesitated. "I was told it must be delivered personally. He is in the royal hall." Claire's fingers stopped on the glass. Samuel's warning returned with perfect clarity. "Do not enter the royal hall after moonrise, no matter who sends for you." "Find someone else," Claire said. "Everyone is occupied." "Then you take it." The servant shook his head. "I am assigned to the western entrance." "Mrs. Whitmore, please." Elder Reed specifically asked for the infirmary attendant who prepared it. Claire looked at Mrs. Whitmore. "Did he say my name?" "No," the servant answered. That should have made the decision easier. It did not. Elder Reed was old, and his tonic mattered. Claire could reach him, hand over the bottle, and leave before anyone noticed her. She had crossed crowded rooms invisibly her entire life. Why should tonight be different? Claire wrapped the bottle in a clean cloth and started toward the door. 5 minutes, she told Mrs. Whitmore. Less, if I can manage it. She took the eastern staircase, intending to use the servants' passage that opened behind the council tables. Halfway upstairs, She found a heavy oak door closed across the corridor. A temporary brass sign hung from its handle. Passage closed during gathering. Use Royal Hall entrance. Claire stared at it. Behind her, the castle bell marked the hour. In the Royal Hall, the final woman completed her presentation. Ethan felt nothing. Harrison leaned toward him. Your Majesty, that concludes the list. Ethan rose. Then this matter is finished. At that exact moment, a side door opened near the back of the hall. Claire stepped through carrying a small dark bottle against her chest. She kept her head lowered. She did not see Ethan turn. She did not see his hand tighten against the throne. She only heard the entire room become strangely quiet. Then, deep inside Ethan Blackwood, something that had slept for 10 years stood up. The first thing Claire noticed was not the king. It was the silence. One moment the royal hall had been alive with low conversation, rustling fabric, and the soft movement of hundreds of guests. The next, every sound seemed to disappear beneath the weight of a single breath. Claire stopped just inside the doorway, the dark medicine bottle held against her chest. She had entered through the wrong door. That much was obvious. Rows of noble families stood beneath crystal lights, dressed in silver, blue, and black, while the 23 women presented to the king remained near the center of the hall. Claire's plain gray dress suddenly felt painfully visible. She searched for Samuel Reed among the council tables. Find him. Deliver the tonic. Leave. It should have been simple. Then she felt it. Attention. Not the scattered curiosity of strangers wondering why an infirmary attendant had interrupted a royal ceremony. This was different. Focused. Heavy enough that Claire's heartbeat changed before she understood why. She slowly raised her eyes. Ethan Blackwood was staring directly at her. He stood beside the throne nearly 60 feet away, one hand resting against the carved wood. Claire had seen portraits of him, of course. Every territory displayed the royal image somewhere. None had captured the stillness of the man himself. Dark hair, gray eyes, broad shoulders held with disciplined control. He did not look surprised. He looked like someone listening to a sound no one else could hear. Claire remembered Samuel's warning. Do not enter the royal hall after moonrise. Her fingers tightened around the bottle. Ethan heard the tiny movement of glass against cloth from across the room. He heard Claire's heartbeat. He heard her quiet inhale. Every sense that had remained obedient for 10 years sharpened at once, but beneath them was something older. His wolf was awake. Not restless. Not confused. Awake. Ethan had expected awakening to feel violent or uncontrollable. Instead, it arrived as certainty. His wolf noticed the woman near the door and refused to notice anything else. Ethan drew one measured breath. Wildflowers, cedar, lavender, expensive perfumes, candle wax, winter air. Hundreds of scents layered the hall. Hers should have vanished among them. Yet beneath everything, Ethan caught something impossibly faint. Rain on warm stone. Pine needles after snow. Something quiet enough that another wolf might never recognize it at all. His wolf did. Ethan stepped away from the throne. Nathan's head turned sharply. Ethan. He ignored him. Across the hall, Claire finally found Samuel. The elder stood near the far council table, and the expression on his face made her stomach drop. He was not surprised to see her. He was afraid of what had already happened. Claire started toward him. One step. Ethan's wolf stirred. She stopped when Samuel lifted one hand in warning. Victoria Hale followed Ethan's gaze toward Claire. Confusion appeared first, followed by recognition. The infirmary Omega, she whispered. Ethan heard her. His eyes never left Claire. She lowered her head and resumed walking, choosing a path along the outer wall. If she could reach Samuel without crossing the center of the hall, she could hand him the tonic and disappear. 10 feet, then 20. Every step she took away from Ethan pulled an unfamiliar tension through his chest. His wolf pressed closer to the surface, not demanding pursuit, but refusing distance. Ethan forced himself to remain still. Control had built his reign. Control had carried him through 10 silent years. He would not surrender it because an unknown Omega had entered a room. Claire reached Samuel and extended the bottle. Your tonic. Samuel did not take it. His gaze moved from Claire to Ethan and back again. I did not send for this. Cold moved through Claire. A servant said you requested it personally. I requested nothing. Somewhere behind them, the side door closed. Claire turned toward it. The servant who had delivered the message was nowhere in sight. She looked back at Samuel. Then someone wanted me here. Samuel's expression confirmed what he would not say aloud. Ethan had begun walking toward them. The crowd separated before him without being asked. Claire heard his footsteps approaching across the polished floor, slow and even. She wanted to move. Samuel's warning told her to move. Yet something quieter inside her, something she had believed too weak to speak, suddenly lifted its head. For the first time in Claire's life, she felt her own wolf clearly. Not frightened. Listening. Ethan stopped several feet away. Up close, the strange pull inside him became quieter rather than stronger. His wolf settled, as if simply reaching her had answered a question Ethan did not understand. Claire met his gray eyes. Neither spoke. Then Ethan noticed the folded yellow paper visible at the edge of her pocket. The silver crescent crossed by 3 lines caught the moonlight. His expression changed. Samuel saw it too. "Your Majesty," the elder said carefully. "Perhaps this conversation should happen somewhere private." Ethan continued looking at Claire. "What is your name?" She hesitated only a second. "Claire Bennett." Samuel closed his eyes. Ethan repeated the surname softly, as though searching an old memory. Then his wolf gave him something it had not given him in 10 years. Not a word. A recognition. And across from him, Claire's silent wolf answered. "Who is she?" Ethan asked, and the question carried farther than he intended. Claire felt every gaze in the royal hall settle on her at once. A few minutes earlier, she had been an invisible infirmary attendant carrying medicine through a room where she did not belong. Now the Alpha King stood several feet away, looking at her as though the other hundreds of people had faded into the walls. "Claire Bennett," Samuel answered carefully. "She works under Mrs. Whitmore in the Eastern Infirmary." Ethan's eyes remained on Claire. "I asked her." Claire swallowed. "My name is Claire Bennett, Your Majesty." Something shifted behind Ethan's gray eyes when she spoke. His wolf had reacted to her heartbeat, her scent, even her footsteps. Her voice was different. It did not awaken hunger or aggression. It brought stillness. The restless pressure beneath his ribs settled immediately, like a compass needle finding north. Ethan disliked how much relief that gave him. "How long have you been at Blackwood Castle?" 8 months. "And before that?" "I worked at a healing house near Cedar Falls." Victoria Hale stepped closer from the presentation line. "Your Majesty, forgive me, but there must be some misunderstanding." Claire glanced toward her. Victoria's expression was composed, but disbelief had cracked its polished surface. "Claire is an Omega, yes, but she has almost no scent. Everyone in the Eastern Wing knows that." A murmur passed through the hall. Claire felt the old embarrassment return. Scentless. Incomplete. Easy words people used when they believed naming a difference gave them the right to define it. Ethan turned his head slightly toward Victoria. "I am aware she is an Omega. Then you understand why this cannot be what it appears to be." "And what does it appear to be?" Victoria opened her mouth, then stopped. No one seemed willing to answer that question in front of the king. Ethan looked back at Claire. "Come closer." Claire did not move. The silence sharpened. Samuel's warning echoed in her mind. But beneath it came another sensation, unfamiliar and strangely calm. Her wolf. For years Claire had known it only as the faintest warmth somewhere inside her, a presence healers described more confidently than she could feel. Now it was unmistakable. Awake. Watching Ethan. "Miss Bennett." Ethan said. Claire took one step forward. Ethan's wolf quieted further. She took another. The tension behind his shoulders eased. He noticed it. Nathan noticed it too. Claire stopped about 6 feet away. Ethan drew a slow breath. Her scent remained barely detectable, but now he could separate it from everything around them. Rain. Pine. A trace of something warm he could not name. "Were you registered for tonight's presentation?" he asked. "No, why not?" Claire almost laughed, but the room was too quiet. "Because nobody thought I belonged here." Ethan's expression changed by a fraction. "Did you?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. Several counselors exchanged glances. Ethan should have found her bluntness disrespectful. Instead, his wolf seemed almost pleased by it. He took one step toward her. Claire instinctively stepped back. The reaction inside Ethan was immediate. His wolf became alert, not against Claire, but against him. Ethan stopped. Claire stared at him. He had felt it clearly. His wolf did not want him to close the distance if she was uncomfortable. That realization disturbed him more than the awakening itself. For 10 years, Ethan had imagined that if his primal instincts ever returned, they would demand control. possession, authority. Instead, the ancient creature inside him was demanding restraint. Everyone out, Ethan said. Harrison blinked. Your Majesty? The gathering is finished. The counselor looked around at the assembled families. But there are matters of protocol. Ethan's gaze moved toward him. Tomorrow. Chairs shifted almost immediately. Guests began moving toward the doors, whispers following them like wind through dry leaves. Victoria remained where she stood. Everyone, Ethan repeated. She lowered her head and joined the departing crowd. Within minutes, only Ethan, Claire, Nathan, and Samuel remained. Claire looked toward the side door. May I leave too? Ethan's wolf stirred at the question. Ethan ignored it. After I understand why you were brought here. Samuel looked sharply at him. You know about the message? Claire asked. What message? Someone told me Elder Reed requested his medicine personally. Samuel lifted the untouched bottle. I did not. Nathan's expression hardened with concern. Then someone deliberately sent her into this hall. Ethan looked toward the closed doors. Yesterday, Claire had entered the castle and awakened his wolf. Tonight, someone had arranged for her to stand beneath the full moon within feet of him. Coincidence had just become difficult to believe. Nathan, find the servant who delivered that message. Nathan nodded and left. Claire reached into her pocket and touched her grandmother's note. Ethan noticed the movement. And now, he said quietly, someone is going to explain that symbol. Samuel remained silent. Claire looked between the two men. I would like that explanation too. Ethan's eyes settled on the silver crescent visible between her fingers. Samuel released a slow breath. Then both of you should understand one thing first. He looked at Ethan. Your wolf did not wake because Claire entered this room. Claire's heartbeat quickened. Ethan went completely still. Samuel turned toward her. It woke yesterday, the moment she crossed onto Blackwood land. That is impossible, Ethan said, but the certainty in his voice did not reach his eyes. Samuel Reed stood beneath the silver light spilling through the tall windows, looking older than he had an hour ago. Yesterday afternoon, Samuel said. Claire crossed the eastern boundary shortly before she arrived at the castle. You felt your wolf awaken at almost the same time. Claire looked from Samuel to Ethan. How could you know when he felt it? Because Nathan came to me afterward. He asked whether any old records described a dormant alpha wolf suddenly responding to someone nearby. Ethan's jaw tightened. Nathan had no authority to discuss that. He was worried about you. Samuel's gaze softened. And he was right to be. Claire folded her grandmother's note between her fingers. The royal hall seemed enormous now that the guests were gone. Hundreds of candles still burned, but their warmth could not touch the strange cold settling beneath her skin. You are both talking as though my arrival caused this. I am saying the timing matters, Samuel replied. Ethan stepped away from Claire. Then we test it. She watched him cross the hall until nearly 40 feet separated them. His footsteps stopped beside the empty presentation platform. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Ethan's expression changed. The calm he had found near Claire began slipping away. His hearing sharpened again. The candles sounded too loud. The rain against the windows became 1,000 separate taps. Beneath his ribs, his wolf moved with growing unease. Ethan took another 10 feet. The sensation intensified. He turned back. Claire stood beside Samuel, looking uncertain rather than frightened. Ethan started toward her. 30 feet. 20. 10. With every step, the noise inside him quieted. By the time he stopped 6 feet away, his wolf had settled completely. Ethan stared at Claire as though she had personally rewritten a law of nature. What happened? She asked. Distance bothers it. Claire blinked. Your wolf? Yes. She instinctively stepped backward. Ethan's wolf immediately became alert. Ethan remained where he was. Claire noticed. Why did you stop? Because you moved away. You are the king. You do not usually stop because someone takes one step backward. Tonight I do. Something in Claire's expression softened, though only slightly. Ethan studied the reaction inside himself. This was not what the old stories described. A newly awakened alpha wolf was supposed to become territorial, demanding, impatient with separation. Ethan felt none of that toward Claire. The moment she showed discomfort, his wolf had objected to him moving closer. He tested the thought by taking a deliberate step backward. Claire relaxed. His wolf relaxed with her. Ethan went still. It is responding to you, Samuel murmured. Not merely to your scent, to your state of mind. Claire shook her head. That makes even less sense. Most forgotten things do when they first return. The main doors opened, and Nathan entered alone. The servant who delivered the message cannot be found. Ethan turned toward him. Name. No one recognizes the description Claire gave. The Western entrance staff changed shifts before the gathering, but every assigned servant is accounted for. Claire's fingers closed around the note. So someone came into the infirmary pretending to work here. Possibly, Nathan said. Or someone wanted us to think that. Ethan looked at Samuel. Which means her appearance tonight was arranged. Samuel said nothing. Ethan's patience thinned. You know more than you are saying. I know fragments. Then start with those. Samuel looked toward Claire. May I see the note again? She handed it to him. He placed the yellowed paper beneath the candlelight and traced the crescent symbol without touching the ink. This mark belonged to the Silver Haven line. Their omegas were called Wolfkeepers. Claire felt the unfamiliar word settle heavily in the room. My grandmother was one of them. She was the last confirmed one. Then what does that make me? Samuel looked at her for a long moment. Someone Margaret spent her life protecting. Claire glanced at Ethan. From him, Ethan's face became unreadable. Samuel slowly shook his head. Not from Ethan. He turned the note toward the moonlight. For the first time, faint writing appeared beneath Margaret's warning, letters hidden in the paper itself. Claire stepped closer. Ethan did not move. For words emerged in pale silver ink. When the king wakes, run. Claire's breath caught. Ethan read the message twice. His wolf remained perfectly calm beside her. That sounds very much like she meant me, he said. Claire looked toward the nearest door. Ethan saw the decision forming before she spoke. I want to leave the castle. His wolf surged into awareness. Ethan ignored it. Tonight. Now. Samuel began to object, but Ethan lifted one hand. The room fell quiet. He looked at Claire, at the uncertainty she was trying to hide, and understood something his wolf seemed to have known first. Keeping her against her would answer nothing. Then you may leave. Claire stared at him, surprised. Ethan turned to Nathan. Have a carriage prepared, and give her an escort to wherever she chooses. His wolf resisted the thought of distance, but Ethan held firm. Claire folded the note and slipped it back into her pocket. Thank you, Your Majesty. She walked toward the doors. 10 feet away, Ethan's wolf grew restless. 20 feet, and the strange pressure returned beneath his ribs. Claire reached the doorway and paused. For one impossible second, Ethan felt another emotion that was not his own. Fear. Not his fear. Hers. His eyes lifted sharply. Claire turned at the same moment. One hand pressed over her heart. Across the distance between them, they both understood it together. The connection was no longer moving in only one direction. Did you feel that? Claire asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet Ethan heard every word across the silent hall. He did not answer immediately because he was still separating his own emotions from the fear that had touched him moments earlier. It had arrived without warning, cold and sharp, then disappeared when Claire turned toward him. Yes, he said. Samuel's expression darkened with recognition. Claire, what did you feel? She kept one hand over her heart. Not fear. Not exactly. Her green eyes found Ethan's. Resistance. Like something was telling me not to walk through that door. Nathan moved toward the entrance and examined the corridor beyond it. There is nobody outside. It was not coming from the corridor, Claire said. She looked at Ethan again. It was coming from him. Ethan disliked the certainty in her voice because she was right. The moment Claire had decided to leave, his wolf had resisted so strongly that the feeling had crossed whatever invisible connection now existed between them. Then I owe you an apology, he said. Claire blinked. Kings probably did not apologize often enough for the words to sound ordinary. You did not choose to feel that. Neither did you. But you should not have to carry anything from me without permission. Samuel watched Ethan carefully. Something about that statement seemed to confirm a thought he had not yet shared. Claire lowered her hand. I still want to leave. Ethan's wolf immediately stirred. He drew a slow breath and refused to let the instinct shape his expression. I know, and you are still allowing it. You do not need my permission. That answer changed something in her face. For most of Claire's life, stronger wolves had treated rank as a reason she should obey. Yet the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories was standing before her, while every instinct inside him apparently wanted her close, and he was opening the door anyway. Thank you, she said. Ethan nodded once. Nathan left to prepare the carriage. Samuel approached Claire before she could follow. At least wait until I bring you something from my study. What? A record your grandmother left with me years ago. Claire stared at him. You had something from her this entire time? Regret crossed his face. I promised Margaret I would not open it unless the Blackwood wolf awakened. Claire almost smiled from disbelief. That is becoming a very inconvenient phrase tonight. Samuel gave her a tired look. 5 minutes. He hurried from the hall. Claire remained near the doorway while Ethan stood farther back, deliberately preserving the distance she had chosen. The strange connection between them quieted. That should have reassured her. Instead, Claire became aware of something else. Her own wolf was still awake. She closed her eyes. For years, reaching inward had been like calling into an empty house. Tonight there was warmth, awareness, a gentle presence that seemed less interested in Ethan than in the fact that Claire was finally listening. She opened her eyes. Your Majesty? Ethan. Claire hesitated. I do not think I should call you that. Probably not in front of the council. The smallest hint of humor touched his voice. There is no council here. Claire almost smiled. Ethan, when your wolf woke yesterday, did you know it was because of me? No, and tonight. The moment you entered. His honesty made her look away. That sounds like fate. I do not trust fate. Neither do I. This time. She did smile, faintly. Ethan's wolf settled so completely that he noticed the change at once. Not because she was closer. Because she was calm. He understood then that Samuel had been right. Whatever this was, it responded to Claire's emotional state. Claire. She looked at him. When you stepped backward earlier, my wolf did not want me to follow. Her brow furrowed. Why? I think it knew you wanted space. Claire considered that in silence. That does not sound very primal. Perhaps we have misunderstood what primal means. Before she could answer, Samuel returned carrying a narrow wooden case covered in dust. He placed it on the nearest table. A silver crescent crossed by 3 lines had been carved into the lid. Claire approached slowly. Margaret gave me this 14 years ago, Samuel said. She told me the person meant to open it would know how. I was 8. She was planning farther ahead than either of us understood. Claire touched the carved symbol. Nothing happened. Then her wolf stirred. Warmth moved through her palm. A soft click sounded inside the case. The lid opened by itself. Samuel inhaled sharply. Ethan stepped closer, then stopped when Claire glanced at him. Inside lay a small silver pendant and a single folded document. Claire lifted the paper. Her grandmother's handwriting covered the first page. At the top was a name Claire had never seen before. Claire Silverhaven. Her breath caught. Below it, Margaret had written one sentence in darker ink. If you are reading this, the king has awakened, and you must decide what kind of king he becomes. Claire looked up at Ethan. For the first time that night, his wolf was not the thing that frightened her. The responsibility was. Claire read the sentence again, hoping the words would become less impossible the second time. They did not. If you are reading this, the king has awakened, and you must decide what kind of king he becomes. My grandmother expected this, she said. Samuel nodded slowly. She feared it. That is not the same thing. Ethan stood several feet away, his expression controlled, but Claire could feel the question inside him now, not through words, but through the strange connection between their wolves. He wanted answers as badly as she did. Claire unfolded the document completely. Beneath Margaret's warning were several paragraphs written in fading ink. She read silently at first. The Silverhaven Omegas had once served beside the earliest Blackwood rulers, not as servants and not always as mates, but as wolf-keepers, rare wolves whose presence could calm the deepest instincts of powerful alphas. They did not command those instincts. They balanced them. This says wolf-keepers were never supposed to control kings, Claire murmured. They reminded them how to control themselves. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. That distinction matters. Apparently it mattered enough for someone to erase them from history. Samuel lowered his gaze. Claire continued reading. Her grandmother had written that generations earlier, fear had replaced trust between the two bloodlines. The Blackwoods became suspicious of anyone capable of influencing a royal wolf, while the Silverhavens learned to hide what they were. Eventually, their names disappeared from public records. Why did my grandmother change our name? Claire asked. Because she believed the old fear could return, Samuel said. And because your abilities were stronger than hers. Claire almost laughed. Abilities? I spent my entire life being told I barely had a wolf. Exactly. Samuel pointed toward the silver pendant inside the case. Margaret learned how to conceal your scent when you were a child. She believed that if no powerful alpha could recognize what you were, no one would ever have reason to use you. Claire looked at the pendant. Use me for what? Ethan answered before Samuel could. Influence. His voice was quiet. A person who could calm an alpha king would be politically valuable. Claire looked at him. You make that sound very polite. Politics often gives ugly intentions polite names. The answer surprised her. Ethan moved toward the window, deliberately increasing the distance between them again. His wolf immediately became restless, but this time he studied the sensation instead of resisting it. There is something I need to know, he said. Claire, think about leaving. She stared at him. I was already planning to. Not the castle. Think about being somewhere you feel safe. Claire hesitated, then pictured the small healing house near Cedar Falls where she had worked before coming to Blackwood. She remembered the herb garden behind the kitchen, morning sunlight across wooden floors, and the quiet creek less than half a mile away. Ethan's wolf softened. He turned toward her. Again, something unpleasant this time. Why? Because I need to know whether I am responding to your emotions or whether you are somehow changing mine. Claire understood. She thought of the royal hall filled with strangers watching her, of Victoria calling attention to the weakness she had carried since childhood. Embarrassment tightened her chest. Ethan felt his wolf rise immediately, alert and protective. His eyes changed, silver becoming brighter for one brief moment. Samuel inhaled. Claire released the memory. Ethan's eyes returned to gray. You felt that, she said. Yes. Did you want to control me? Ethan considered the question carefully. No, keep me here. His wolf answered before his pride could. Yes. Ethan ignored it. My instinct does. I do not. Claire watched him. There is a difference? There has to be. The simple answer settled between them. Ethan stepped closer, but stopped well beyond arm's reach. My wolf may recognize something in you. That does not give me ownership of your choices. Claire's fear eased slightly. His wolf eased with it. Samuel looked between them with growing wonder. Margaret was right. Claire turned. About what? The old records describe Wolfkeepers incorrectly. They say the Omega changes the Alpha. Samuel shook his head. But you are not changing him. You are revealing him. The wolf responds, and Ethan chooses what to do with that response. Claire looked down at her grandmother's final lines. There was one passage she had not yet read aloud. She hesitated, then spoke. If the awakened king mistakes recognition for possession, leave him. If he chooses restraint when instinct demands otherwise, do not fear the wolf. Fear those who will fear what the two of you could become. The main doors opened before anyone could respond. Nathan entered quickly, holding a household ledger. Ethan, we found something. His expression was unusually serious. The servant who sent Claire into the hall did not come from outside the castle. Ethan turned. Then who was it? Nathan placed the ledger on the table. Someone used a royal authorization seal to change the service assignments 15 minutes before the gathering. Samuel went still. Only 6 people possessed such authority. Claire looked at the names written across the page. 5 belonged to council members she recognized. The 6th made her blood run cold. The authorization had been issued under a name she had seen only once before, in her grandmother's hidden document. Margaret Silverhaven. That cannot be her, Claire whispered. Her grandmother had been gone for 9 years, yet Margaret Silverhaven's name sat beneath a royal authorization issued less than an hour ago. Nathan turned the household ledger toward Ethan. The seal is genuine. The authorization was entered through the old administrative system, using credentials that should have expired years ago. Ethan studied the page. Who had access? Originally, your father, 3 senior counselors, the royal archivist, and Margaret Silverhaven. Claire looked up sharply. My grandmother worked here? Samuel closed his eyes for a moment. Yes. Claire stared at him. You might have mentioned that. Margaret served as an herbal consultant to the royal household before you were born. Publicly, that was all she was. And privately? Samuel glanced at Ethan. She was the last Wolfkeeper assigned to the Blackwood line. The words settled into the empty hall. Ethan's expression changed first. Assigned to whom? Samuel hesitated. Your father. Claire felt Ethan's emotions through the bond before his face revealed anything. Surprise came first, followed by something colder and quieter. Not anger. Recognition. Pieces of an old history were beginning to align. My father knew what she was, Ethan said. He did, and he erased the Silver Havens from the records. Not alone. Samuel crossed to the table and opened Margaret's document again. Your father believed no king should depend upon another wolf for balance. Margaret believed dependence was never the purpose. A Wolfkeeper did not govern the king. She helped his wolf recognize the difference between instinct and choice. Claire looked at the hidden authorization. Then how did her name appear tonight? Nathan answered carefully. Someone preserved her credentials. Ethan's gaze moved toward the 6 names in the ledger. Someone who knew she might matter again. Claire suddenly remembered the wooden medicine box. The note. Everyone looked at her. It appeared beneath bottles I packed myself. Someone placed it there after I arrived. She touched the pocket where Margaret's warning rested. What if the person who sent me into this hall also wanted me to find the note? Samuel frowned. Then they wanted you frightened and curious at the same time. They wanted her to come here knowing enough to recognize the danger, but not enough to understand it. Ethan said. Claire looked at him. Why? To see what we would do. Ethan's wolf stirred, but the response was different now. Claire could feel his attention becoming sharper, focused not on keeping her close, but on understanding the invisible hand moving events around them. She also felt something unexpected from her own wolf. Calm. It trusted his restraint. That frightened Claire less than how natural the trust felt. Nathan turned several pages in the ledger. There is more. Margaret's authorization was not used only tonight. He pointed to an older entry. Someone accessed the sealed royal archive yesterday at 4:17 in the afternoon. Ethan remembered the exact moment. Claire had crossed onto Blackwood land shortly before then. What was removed? Nathan placed a small receipt beside the ledger. One file. Silver Haven Covenant, dated 1887. Samuel went pale. I thought that document was destroyed. Apparently not. Claire looked toward the moonlit windows. What is the covenant? Samuel walked to the wooden case and lifted the silver pendant Margaret had left behind. The agreement that ended the old partnership between your families. He placed it carefully in Claire's palm. The metal felt cool for only a second. Then warmth spread through her fingers. The crescent symbol glowed faintly. Ethan's wolf became perfectly still. Samuel continued. The public history says the Silverhaven line disappeared naturally. The covenant tells another story. They agreed to vanish from royal life on one condition. Which was? Ethan asked. Samuel looked directly at him. If a Blackwood king ever awakened to a Silverhaven again, the king would have no legal right to claim her through rank, tradition, or mate law. Claire's fingers closed around the pendant. Ethan said nothing. Samuel's voice softened. She would choose freely, or there would be no bond. Claire searched Ethan's face, waiting for disappointment, resistance, anything that resembled the authority everyone expected from him. Instead, relief moved through their connection. Claire blinked. You are relieved. Ethan almost smiled. Apparently I am. Why? Because now there is a law preventing everyone else from deciding this for us. The answer reached somewhere inside Claire that fear had occupied all evening. Her wolf warmed beneath it. Nathan glanced toward the ledger again. There is still one problem. Whoever opened the archive knew the covenant existed, knew Claire had arrived, and knew exactly how to bring her into the gathering. Ethan's expression sharpened. Can you trace the access? Not from this ledger, but the archive records every entry in a separate handwritten register. Where is it? Below the West Tower. Claire started to speak, but a soft sound interrupted her. Click. The silver pendant in her palm had opened. Inside was a tiny folded strip of paper. Claire carefully removed it. Margaret's handwriting covered only one side. She read the message aloud. If Ethan Blackwood is the king when this opens, ask him what happened the winter his wolf went silent. Claire looked up. Ethan had gone completely still. The connection between them filled with a grief so old and carefully buried that Claire immediately wished she had not felt it. Samuel lowered his gaze. Nathan said nothing. Ethan stared at the note for several seconds before meeting Claire's eyes. 10 years ago, he said quietly, your grandmother disappeared from this castle. Claire's breath caught. Ethan looked toward the dark windows. 3 months later, my wolf stopped speaking to me. Tell me what happened that winter, Claire said. Ethan looked at the small note in her hand, then toward the empty royal hall where the last candles burned beneath the full moon. For 10 years, he had treated that season like a locked room inside his memory. Tonight, Claire had somehow found the key. Margaret came to me 3 days before she disappeared, he said. I was 24. My father was still king, and I had only recently returned to Blackwood Castle after several years governing the northern districts. Claire listened without interrupting. She told me there were people inside the royal court who wanted the old covenant destroyed. She believed the Silverhaven line had been discovered. Did she tell you about me? No. She never mentioned a granddaughter. Ethan paused. She only said there was someone who needed to remain hidden. Claire lowered her eyes. Her grandmother had been protecting her even then. What did you do? I offered her royal protection. A faint bitterness entered Ethan's voice. I thought authority could solve anything if I used enough of it. Samuel remained silent near the table. Nathan watched his friend with an expression Claire could not read. Margaret refused. Ethan continued. She told me protection that could not be refused was only another kind of cage. Claire recognized her grandmother in those words so clearly that her throat tightened. She left the castle that night. 3 days later. No announcement. No explanation. Her rooms were empty. Ethan looked toward the moonlit windows. My father ordered everyone to stop asking questions. 3 months afterward, he became ill and transferred most royal responsibilities to me. That was when my wolf began fading. Fading? Claire asked. At first, it stopped reacting to other wolves. Then sense. Then instinct. Eventually, there was only silence. Claire remembered what Samuel had explained about wolfkeepers. You thought something was wrong with you. For 10 years. The admission was quiet, and you decided never to marry because of it. Ethan met her eyes. I refused to ask someone to build a life around a bond one could not honestly return. Claire felt the truth of that through the strange connection between them. His refusal had never been contempt for marriage. It had been restraint disguised as coldness. Samuel moved toward the table. There is another possibility. Margaret may not have been the reason your wolf went silent. Her disappearance and its silence may both have been consequences of the same event. Ethan turned. The covenant. Perhaps someone interfered with the old bond between the bloodlines. We need the archive register to know more. Nathan checked the clock above the eastern doors. I can retrieve it. Ethan shook his head. Tomorrow. Claire has already spent enough of tonight being pulled into decisions other people made for her. He turned to her. The carriage is still waiting. Claire glanced toward the doors. Part of her wanted to stay until every secret had been opened. Another part wanted a room without kings, covenants, hidden names, or wolves suddenly speaking after years of silence. I still want to leave, she said. Ethan's wolf resisted immediately. Claire felt the emotion across the connection, but something had changed. Ethan did not fight the instinct. He acknowledged it and let it pass. Then leave. He removed the black signet ring from his right hand. The royal wolf carved into the silver caught the candlelight. He placed it on the table between them. Claire frowned. What are you doing? Making something clear. Ethan stepped away from the ring. In this room, that symbol can command nearly anyone. It can open borders, summon councils, and turn my preference into an order before I finish speaking. His gaze remained steady on hers. I do not want it speaking for me now. Claire's wolf became quiet. Ethan continued. My wolf recognizes you. I cannot deny that anymore. I also cannot tell you what that recognition means. He glanced at Margaret's note. But whatever it means, you are not required to become anything because of it. Not my Luna. Not my mate. Not a Wolfkeeper standing beside a throne. Claire felt warmth rise behind her eyes and blinked it away. Then what are you asking? Nothing tonight. The answer surprised her. Go somewhere you feel safe. Decide what you want before anyone tells you what destiny expects. Claire looked at the signet ring resting between them. The most powerful man in 7 territories had set aside the symbol that could make others obey, simply so she would know she was free to say no. And if I do not come back? She asked. Ethan's wolf answered with a deep ache that Claire felt inside her own chest. Ethan himself remained still. Then I will learn to live with an awakened wolf that disagrees with me. A small smile touched Claire's mouth. That sounds difficult. I have ruled a council for 11 years. I have experience. Claire laughed softly, and Ethan's wolf settled at the sound. Minutes later, she stepped into the waiting carriage outside Blackwood Castle. Ethan remained beneath the covered entrance as the horses started down the moonlit road. He did not follow. He did not order her return. He simply watched until the carriage disappeared beyond the pine trees. Claire looked back through the rear window at the shrinking castle. Her grandmother's pendant rested warm in her palm. Then the silver crescent opened by itself once more. A second hidden compartment appeared beneath the first. Inside was a final strip of paper bearing 5 words in Margaret's handwriting. The king was never the danger. The king was never the danger. Claire read the 5 words until the carriage reached the first bend beyond the Blackwood gates. Then she lifted her eyes toward the castle disappearing behind the pine trees. Her grandmother had warned her to run when the king awakened, but perhaps the warning had never meant she should run from Ethan. Perhaps Margaret had needed Claire to see what happened when he was given every reason to command her and chose not to. "Stop the carriage," Claire said. The driver glanced back. "Miss Bennet, please turn around." By the time Claire returned to Blackwood Castle, dawn had begun painting the eastern mountains pale gold. Ethan had not slept. He stood inside the council chamber with Nathan and Samuel while the handwritten archive register lay open on the long oak table. The truth had finally surfaced. Years earlier, several royal officials had quietly worked to erase the Silverhaven Covenant because they feared a future Wolfkeeper might carry influence greater than their own. Margaret had discovered what they were doing and disappeared from court to protect Claire. Ethan's wolf had not failed him because he was broken. It had withdrawn after the ancient balance between the two bloodlines was deliberately severed from the royal records and traditions meant to protect it. When the chamber door opened, Ethan looked up. Claire stood there in the same plain gray dress, her grandmother's silver pendant resting against her collar. His wolf rose instantly. Then it became still. Not because she was close, because she had returned by choice. "Claire." Ethan said her name as though he had been holding it behind his teeth all night. She walked to the table and placed Margaret's final message beside the register. Samuel read it first. "The king was never the danger." His eyes closed briefly. "Margaret wanted you to judge the man before trusting the bond," he said. Claire looked at Ethan. "I think she wanted me to know whether you would let me leave." Ethan's gaze dropped to the black signet ring still lying where he had placed it hours earlier. "You were always free to leave." "I know." Claire took a breath. "That is why I came back." Before Ethan could answer, the council doors opened again. Harrison entered with several counselors, all summoned by Nathan before sunrise. Victoria Hale stood among them, composed but curious. Ethan picked up his signet ring but did not put it on. "Yesterday, this council asked me to choose a wife for the throne," he said. "My answer remains no." Confusion moved across the room. Ethan continued, "I will never marry a woman because a council requires an heir, because a treaty requires a queen, or because an ancient bond tells me I possess someone I barely know." His eyes found Claire. "But I was wrong about one thing. I believed refusing marriage meant refusing the possibility that anyone could ever stand beside me." Claire's wolf warmed quietly inside her. Ethan walked toward her and stopped several feet away, leaving the final distance for Claire to decide. "My wolf recognized you before I knew your name," he said. "It recognized you before I understood your bloodline. But instinct is not a promise, Claire. Choices." The entire chamber had fallen silent. Ethan held out his hand, palm upward, asking rather than commanding. "I will not ask you to become my Luna today. I will not ask you for a bond you have not chosen. I am asking for the chance to know you when neither of us is running from what we are." Claire looked at his hand. Yesterday, she had entered this castle believing she was the Omega no Alpha would ever notice. Now a king stood before his council refusing to turn destiny into an order. She crossed the remaining distance and placed her hand in his. Ethan's wolf stirred with immense recognition, but there was no restless demand this time. Only peace. "One chance," Claire said softly. A smile reached Ethan's eyes. "I can work with one." Samuel looked down at Margaret's pendant as the silver crescent began glowing beneath the morning light. Then something unexpected happened. A second symbol appeared beneath the first, an ancient mark that was missing from every record they had opened that night. Samuel's breath caught. Claire noticed. "What is it?" He stared at the pendant. "Something Margaret never told me." Ethan turned toward him. Samuel slowly lifted his eyes. The Silverhavens did not disappear merely to protect the Wolfkeepers. Outside, the first sunlight touched Blackwood Castle, and somewhere beyond the mountains, wolves began answering the morning in distant calls. Samuel looked at Claire with wonder. They were protecting what the Wolfkeepers could awaken. Claire tightened her hand around Ethan's. Whatever waited beyond that secret belonged to another day. For now, the king who had trusted only power had chosen restraint, and the Omega who had survived by remaining invisible had finally chosen to be seen. Thank you for staying with Claire and Ethan to the end of their story. Tell us in the comments what you think Margaret was truly protecting and whether Claire made the right choice by returning to Blackwood Castle. If you enjoyed their journey, please like this video, share it with someone who loves stories of destiny and second chances, and subscribe to support the channel and join us for the next story.